think back because I'm a little bit older when people would just be hurt. It is a health issue. Please vote.
Thank you so much, Pat, and thank you again, Olivia. Good evening, Los Angeles Central Committee members. First off, I want to acknowledge, commemorate, and echo the statements made by Recording Secretary Olivia Lee about Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Olivia, you brought so much sentiment and understanding of what this is, and I, of course, I'm wearing my Planned Parenthood shirt tonight to stand with all of you as we have seen in the last few days what has been unfolding. When we started the term of our Central Committee a couple of years ago, we were plagued by heinous hate crimes targeting the API community. And while we still have so much work to do, I'm proud that Los Angeles Democrats have worked hard to stand with the community that continues to stand with our party and, of course, our values. As we move into the June primary, I'm particularly proud of all of the AAPI candidates who have stepped up to lead in our communities, especially those endorsed by our party. I look forward to working to not only elect those candidates, but to push to recruit more because we all know that representation truly does matter. And Democrats will continue to fill seats that reflect the largest county in the nation. And of course, speaking of the June primary, thank you all again for all of your hard work you put into our endorsement process. We have thankfully put up our voter digital guide. If staff can put that in the chat. That's available to download on our, my website at www.lacdp.org/candidates. It's our digital voter guide. If our staff can put that again in the chat. Please share this guide with our friends, family, and community members. Ballots have already started to arrive in mailboxes over the weekend, so the election is not in 28 days. It's happening now, folks. It's happening yesterday. It's happening on Saturday. So let's make sure to get our endorsed candidates elected to office because we've worked so hard to make sure that we've had this process. Through our Blue 22 fund we created last year, we have been able to provide all of our locally endorsed candidates, each with contributions, and we have targeted mailers, digital ads, robocalls, and text messages hitting all across the county as we speak. This has been the most robust primary plan we've had, and thanks to all of our Blue 22 donors who continue to make that possible. That's the kind of work we are doing here in Los Angeles, and that's the work you all are helping us with. Consider talking to your friends and family and ask them to donate today at www.lacdp.org/blue22 for more information. And with that, this weekend is our annual JFK Awards at Union Station. I'm looking forward to seeing all of those who have purchased tickets or sponsored. All of that information can be found at www.lacdp.org/JFK2022. Lastly, we don't have much business tonight, so we should be done a little earlier than normal. However, you all did receive an email personally from me yesterday regarding tonight's bylaw amendments. A couple of folks seem to be a little bit confused. It's unfortunate that there are members distorting the reality of these amendments that were designed to strengthen our process after we found holes that needed to be patched up based on feedback we received during the last process from all of you. It also expands the committee's opportunity to work with our Campaign Services Committee to recruit candidates in critical races from school boards and water boards that are so desperate for leadership. This should be an easy vote tonight because it does not change at all the power of our process as members or change the threshold that candidates need to hit to be our, of course, endorsed candidates. It's the right thing to do for the future of our early endorsement and recruitment process. And I ask you all to urge you to please pass these amendments tonight. I want to give kudos to Lawrence Jackson, Jimmy with Gray, Gary Shea, and the entire Rules Committee for preparing these tonight and look forward to actually getting this done. The team will be working with regional directors and assembly district chairs and vice chairs to start the post-apportionment migration, into new districts. This process has taken a little longer than anticipated. As you know, we've got an election coming up, and of course the JFKs all at the same time. But we will have this complete and ready for our July mini reorganization. So we are prepping for that. And then also, I just heard from the chair of 8066, we are no longer doing the Gardena City Council race tonight. So we will skip that part on the agenda. There's a few legislative items, and then we'll be done for the night. So let's get to it. And of course, reminder, thank you for your continued partnership and leadership in your areas. And on behalf of our 3.1 million Democrats, as always, be sure to connect with your regional or AD leadership for any updates or important information. That concludes the chair's reports. Item 9, there are no June 22 endorsements. So just a reminder.
Jesus.
All right, so with that, we'll jump to item number 10. We'll start with the Labor Committee, Cecile Ben David and Mr. Mark Ramos.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. The meeting was held on April 19th. We had a very robust meeting, and the major portion of the meeting that I'm going to talk about, we met with Natasha Castro of Lane, LAANE. She spoke about their efforts in Los Angeles to enact fair work week legislation, because too many workers suffer from unpredictable hours of work, which leads to unpredictable wages earned. This affects both unions and non-union workers and many people of color. There is a meeting scheduled today, May 10th, and we're working on a draft letter that I sent to the LACDP that I want sent to the that the committee wants sent to the LA City Council. All right, Mark, are you here? Can you go on about our report?
Good evening, everybody. Mark Ramos here. So on my end, we're just going to report on it. You know, I'm sure you've heard, we have ratified new 3-year agreements with the major grocers here in Southern California, Albertsons, Ralph's, Vons, and Stater Brothers. We've seen record wage increases for our members, benefit improvements, but also, hold on, start my video. I don't know. Oh, let me start the video. There we go. I'm sorry. So along with that, benefit improvements for our members. But through all of that, we are still negotiating the pharmacist agreement for our members who work in the pharmacies and the grocery stores. They have been through a lot the last couple of years, and the employers continue to put more and more on them. And it is just kind of diluting the profession of the retail pharmacist. So moving really slow. The pharmacists have always been a kind of a timid group, but we're working towards building up their strength and possibly taking a strike vote with them. Also, I wanted to report on the Cedars-Sinai strike with SEIU UHW. Those of you may know that there is a strike, a 5-day strike right now at Cedars-Sinai. They're asking folks to come out this week, 5/11, 5/12, and 5/13, to the picket line to support those folks, those hardworking folks out there. Cedars-Sinai, as we all know, is a world-renowned medical facility. But one of the reasons it's a world-renowned medical facility is because of the people who work in the facility, the people who provide the care. So come on out, support these folks. It is really, really important. These folks are just asking for proper staffing levels, proper safety measures. So hoping if you're available, please join that picket line there at Cedars-Sinai. Appreciate it. Thanks, Cecile. Back to you.
Thank you, Mark. And before we leave, we just want to know, Mark, we did send you a letter that we want sent to the city council. What is the procedure to do that?
Yeah, we'll take a look at it and we'll take care of it for you, Cecile. So just feel free to send it again. I think you might have already sent it though.
Yeah, I sent it this afternoon. We want all our members to know that the Labor Committee is asking the county, us, LA County, to support Lane in their efforts to have a workable work week in Los Angeles.
So we'd appreciate your support. That is a major project for my sister local UFCW 770. Sorry, I've got a city council meeting one year and this meeting in the other year. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your support.
Okay, that ends our report.
Thank you both so much. We will note and file your report. And then just to add to that, for folks who are interested in helping our sisters and brothers at SEIU, UHW, they are there at the picket line at Cedar Sinai every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I will be there either Thursday or Friday myself. Moving on to item 10, section B, rules and legal. Ms. Jimmy Woods-Gray and Lauren Zaxton will take it away for the second reading of our bylaw changes.
Jesus.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I turn to our report, I would like to take a moment to encourage people to talk to your relatives who are out of state about how important the U.S. Senate race is and how important it is for us to be able to confirm federal judges who, in fact, respect individual rights. So with that, at this time, we have before us on second reading an amendment to Article 11, Section B6. As this is the second reading, I will need to read the amendment unless there's a motion to waive reading and proceed to an explanation. Is there such a motion? I see Mr. Hake is making the motion. Mr. Chair, is there a second? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of waiving the reading, please raise your hands.
No, this. Oh my God. Point of order. Come on. Jesus. F&H
Please let me know when
Christ. Jesus.
Then my thing went off. Hit the wrong one.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Are we ready for no's? I think, are we ready for no's? Sounds like we're ready for no's. All those who are opposed, please raise your hands. Motion passes 66 to 30. So I'm going to explain the changes and then recognize my co-chair, Jimmy Woods-Gray, for a technical amendment. After that is acted on, we'll proceed with questions, debate, and a vote. So under our bylaws, there are two stages to endorsement. The first is an endorsement recommendation process. The second is the consideration of that recommendation by this body, what our bylaws calls this committee. And there's a requirement that 60% of this body must vote for a candidate to be endorsed in order for the candidate to be our officially endorsed candidate. Nothing in this bylaw amendment in any way affects the two required stages for an endorsement. There's still a recommendation process and there's still a vote of the body on the recommendation. Ordinarily, the endorsement recommendation process starts and is completed only after the close of filing. The purpose of that rule is to assure participation in the endorsement process of all Democratic candidates, no matter when they file. The endorsement recommendation is for most races made by the assembly districts in which the race is held. However, endorsements for a great many races, specifically races covering 4 or more assembly districts, and races for Los Angeles County offices, municipal offices of the City of Los Angeles, and board races for the LAUSD, which is the Unified School District, and the LA Community College District, are recommended by the Candidate Interview Committee, and judicial races are recommended by the Judicial Interview Committee. Some races require treatment because they are especially challenging for Democrats to win. So we have what the bylaws call a, quote, rare, close quote, exception. In the words of the bylaws, an exception that applies, quote, in rare circumstances, close quote, in 4 particular kinds of races. Races currently are historically held by a non-Democrat, historically difficult for a Democrat to be victorious, or Democratic disadvantage in voter registration, or there's a the Democratic disadvantage in voter performance. In these races, we have for more than a dozen years had a candidate recruitment track. This allows the candidates to get a lot of hand-holding and the advantage of an early endorsement. Again, this is a narrow exception where a race meets one of the four criteria I just described that requires something extraordinary to be done to help give Democrats a leg up on what promises to be a challenging race. Those of you who have been members of the body for a long time know that this is very, very seldom used. This is that narrow exception, which is the subject of this bylaws amendment. The exceptional recommendation process starts with a collaborative vetting process. The purpose of that collaborative vetting process, led by our chair, is to make sure that there is a broad consensus that a race really should be put into this narrow exceptional category, and that's already true. As part of the amendment, the collaborative vetting process is also to make sure that the race is put into the correct one of two, what will now be early endorsement recommendation processes within that category. So we're going from 1 to 2 processes, still within the same category. The first and the presumptive category, given the criteria, is the recruitment and early endorsement process. In these races where Democrats have an exceptionally hard time winning, and thus it's hard to get someone to run, what we do is we go out and recruit a candidate, and then if we are successful and that candidate seems viable and likely to get a consensus around that candidate, then we recommend an early endorsement. This process is substantially unchanged, except that we've renamed it in Section 6C, so now it's called the Candidate Recruitment Track. We've taken out the co-chairs of the Candidate Interview Committee as members of the Screening Committee in Section 6D1, and we've also made it more explicit in Section 6E that to fit into this exception, recruited candidate must be one who, quote, would benefit from the training, support, and early endorsement, close quote, offered by the candidate recruitment track process. The second process is a new process. It's one where there doesn't need to be recruitment, but there does need to be some kind of leg up for the candidate in the form of an early endorsement. That is an endorsement before the close of time. That would require that the candidate be viable and ready to run in an exceptionally challenging race. The fact that we have exceptionally challenging races and candidates ready to run is a testament to LACDP's success in building up our bench, but also a testament to the fact that we still have challenging races that we need to be able to win. So the proposal creates a new Section 7 for the early endorsement other than through the candidate recruitment track process. That's the title of Section 7. It reiterates that this process is to be, quote, rare, close quote, in Section 7A. It uses the same 4 criteria for difficulties faced by Democrats in Section 7B, the exact same 4 I just described. Any member can initiate this process, just as is true in the candidate recruitment process. And just as now, we expect that the key players in initiating the process will be the regional vice chairs and assembly district delegation chairs. The amendment then requires, also in Section 7B, an initial collaborative vetting process led by the chair and the Campaign Services Committee, followed by an agreement that the race qualifies for early endorsement by a 60% majority of the policy committee, and then a full vetting of the candidate or candidates selected for consideration for early endorsement by the Candidate Services Committee. That's the recommendation that comes to the body. All of the other aspects of our ordinary endorsement process, including the vote of the entire body, remain the same. That's what Section 7C says. Section 7C also says that if there are fewer early endorsements than open seats, and that could be because there are none, you use the general endorsement process. That is the Candidate Interview Committee, or ADs, as appropriate. That is what these amendments do. That is an overview of how they work and an explanation of each of the sections. I'm now going to recognize Ms. Woods-Gray, my co-chair, for a motion on a technical amendment. Jimmy?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair, I have seen some comments that suggest that many of our members are not sure that the initial collaborative process in vetting races for early endorsement is as inclusive for the early endorsement track as it is for the candidate recruitment track. it's supposed to be inclusive. Oh, I see something coming up here. I don't know what that is. Okay. It says okay, but I don't know. I'm pressing it out. You can hear me, right? Because there's something coming up on my screen that I'm not sure. It wants me to say okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So my amendment is to add the words members of the Assembly District Delegation in whose jurisdiction the race is situated, and before the words the Campaign Services Committee in the third sentence of the new section 7B, so that it reads, if a race meets the above prerequisites, the chair of this committee, in consultation with the members of the Assembly District Delegation in whose jurisdiction the race is situated, and the Campaign Services Committee, may recommend to the Policy Committee a race for early endorsement. Mr. Chair, this is a technical amendment because all that it does is to make explicit that the collaborative vetting process for deciding whether a race is eligible for early endorsement is inclusive. That's the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Woods Gray. Is there a second to this motion, Mr. Chair?
Oh my gosh.
It's been moved by Ms. Woods Gray and seconded by Shanna Igglesby. Inasmuch as this is a technical amendment, I think we can proceed to a vote without debate. Without objection, those in favor cast your ballot by voting yes and raising your hand
You can't do
in the
that.
reaction section.
You've got to discuss these things. My God, have mercy. Jesus Christ. My God.
Please let me know when we have a count.
Oh my God. And Gonzalez is voting. The chair's voting. Oh my God.
All right, we're ready. Please lower your hands and we're ready to proceed to no's.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
All right, so the motion passes. The vote was 85 to 30. Is that correct? 85-35. Thank you.
Okay, thank
We can proceed to questions. If there are any questions, I'll take them now, and then we will proceed to debate. So questions need to be actual questions. There will actually be a time for debate later. Why don't we take three and see if we have any after that?
We'll start with Tina Fredericks in 8041. Tina?
I'm sorry, I had to lower my hand.
No worries. Mitchell, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Jackson, I want to ask about, even after the technical amendments under section 7C, is it true that the recommendation committee that would be selecting candidates for endorsement would be the campaign services committee?
So I think that's a somewhat complicated question. The way the process works is that there are several steps. So the first step is that any member can suggest a race. The second step is that there's a vetting process. That vetting process after the technical amendment includes the members of the Assembly District delegations, the Campaign Services Committee, the chair, and anybody else that the chair wants to include. That recommendation to consider the race for early endorsement goes to the Policy Committee, which then by a 60% vote has to find that an early endorsement is appropriate. Then the Candidate Recommendation Committee that would hear the potential endorsement would be the Campaign Services Committee. So in that roundabout way, the answer to your question is somewhat yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, Mr. Chair.
Sarah Ruse, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is regarding, if this secondary exception process goes through to the end and a recommendation is made and it is put to the floor, to the full body, as for any other endorsement, early or otherwise, if people want to pull that suggestion, does the pull have to come from the Campaign Services Committee membership only, the way it's currently set up for other such polls? You guys heard me, right?
Lawrence, you were on mute. Let's start over. Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay. It is not the contemplation that these would be consent calendar items because it is an exceptional process. So you would be voting on the recommendation.
But the one we just had, wasn't that, that had to be...
It was pulled from the consent calendar. That was the issue.
Right. And that was an early endorsement, was it not?
We do not use the consent calendar for the SEER process, so you don't have to worry about it being pulled from the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Barbara Evans. Barbara Evans, going once. Yeah.
What? My goodness. Hello. Hey, buddy. Hello.
Okay, we'll go to the last question. Hans Johnson.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Lawrence, for entertaining questions here. I wanted to ask, what is the supposed problem that this bylaw is aiming to remedy? Because for some of us, it looks as if this is a response to an issue that came up in January with a recommendation for an early endorsement in the sheriff's race for a candidate whose candidacy has subsequently imploded in the wake of that vote. And I wanted to ask, what is the supposed urgent problem that this convoluted and very confusing bylaw amendment is seeking to somehow rectify?
Well, that
Twice.
So I'm not going to speculate about all of the reasons that the people who put this forward put it forward, but I will tell you this, that the process that we have right now for getting an early endorsement, for endorsing a candidate who is somebody that we believe is a consensus type of candidate like Jeff Prang, using a recruitment process that really wasn't designed for that, isn't appropriate for that. It is what was the basic impetus for creating a process that was designed for a consensus type of candidate who, in fact, we would like to give an early endorsement because the race is in and of itself particularly challenging, and we need to have a mechanism to do that. This process is as much like the pre-existing process as possible. recognizing the differences between a process where you have to recruit a candidate and you need to constantly be going back to the exact same folks who you're going to need to help lead that candidate by the hand through the process because they weren't necessarily prepared to be running, and a process where you have a candidate who already is ready to run and you want to just give that candidate the leg up that that person needs to be able to hold on to a challenging race. So that is the impetus within the Rules Committee, and that's the only answer I can give on that. At this point, I think we are prepared to proceed to debate, Mr. Chair. So we're going to first take names of those who want to speak in favor. Is that correct? Oh, go ahead.
So with all due respect to the last person asking the question, a blog does not speak for this body, and its interpretation of it doesn't speak for this body either. So, Lawrence, what I think is the misunderstanding from one of our members who's sending around non-union mailers to people to confuse them for their own platform to use us for their own higher office. Can you explain to us, Lawrence, the simplicity of what the steer committee is versus what the campaign services committee does, and the simplicity of what this bylaw change does? Because this is the second reading into which we've gotten to this point where one person has attention is now confusing our members because they're not reading it. Could you explain that, please?
Okay,
You can't personally attack people.
A general rule, which is that we only deal with endorsements after the close.
My God.
We have an exceptional process where right now the existing process is a process designed for recruitment. And that process starts with somebody requesting that a race be designated as a race that fits into this exception. Then the chair creates a collaborative, deliberative process. The SEER committee is part of that process. And the SEER committee, which consists of, in addition to campaign services committee co-chairs, the regional vice chairs, the district delegation chairs, and then non-voting club representatives. That process is a vetting process, and there's 2 stages to that vetting process. And remember, that's because this was all set up to be a recruitment process. You need every single person at every single level to be buying into recruiting and helping this person through the process. Then that recommendation comes to this body for a vote, which requires 60%. That process wasn't really well suited for when you already had a candidate ready to run. So a process that still has the same steps, a member requesting the race be designated. Usually that's an AD chair or a regional vice chair. A vetting process led by our chair involving the campaign services committee and the affected ADs. Then following that, a review of the candidate. Actually, before that happens, the policy committee then makes sure that this really should be an early endorsement race, which is to try to make sure that it is the kind of candidate that is going to be a consensus candidate. Then the candidate is vetted by the campaign services committee. That becomes the recommendation to the body, and it still takes 60%. So it's not created to be a process that's easy, simple, ordinary. It's actually an arduous process to try to make sure that we're only giving early endorsements, which is a big advantage to somebody in races that really, really need it.
Jesus Christ.
So I believe we're ready to proceed to debate, and Mr.
Says
Chair,
who?
you can take the names of those in favor first,
Says who?
or we
got
all the
hands
hands
up.
down first.
What the?
Well, just for clarity, we were planning on tackling to these amendments before this process started. We just wanted to wait until after the process was actually over so that folks can experience that. So just want to make that clear. So back to you, Lawrence. We will go ahead and take 3 speakers.
This is ridiculous.
So this is the committee's recommendation is the motion. So
That's ridiculous.
The motion is
That
to
is
adopt
terrible.
the amendments to
That is terrible.
Article 9, Section B,
That is terrible.
amend Section B6, and to add a new Section B7. Sorry,
Okay.
not Article 9, it's Article 11. Sorry.
Thank you, Lawrence.
As amended by Ms. Gray's technical amendment.
With that, we will take the first three speakers in opposition to the committee's recommendation.
Jesus. F and H Christ.
Staff is taking account. Give me 1 second.
That's ridiculous. That is
Mitchell Tsai, Hannah
ridiculous.
Cho, and Jane Bouchon. Okay, if staff can clear the hands. Three speakers in support of the committee's recommendation. Raise your hands. Okay. Shanna Inglesby, Lester Aponte, and Recording Secretary Olivia Lee.
Jesus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debate is limited to 3 per side, 1 minute per speaker. We're going to begin with the speaker in opposition. That is Mr. Tsai.
Why? What the?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. My name is Mitchell Tsai. I'm an elected party delegate from Assembly District 41. I'm opposing these amendments for a simple reason. The bylaws create a new process for early endorsement that does not require input from locally elected Assembly District delegates on the candidate selection process. The technical amendments that were brought before you today and were passed are rushed and show that as written, the bylaw amendments do not achieve the intent that the Rules Committee were intending to create. In addition, it indicates a critical flaw. Why does the technical amendments include Assembly delegates in choosing the races selected for early endorsement, but does not include them in actually choosing the candidate? Chairman Jackson of the committee stated that these two processes should be different because one involves candidate recruitment and the new process does not require candidate recruitment. But he fails to provide a reason as to why party delegates elected party delegates are involved in the candidate recruitment process, but are not allowed to select and vote on.
That's time. Moving on to the first speaker in support of the committee's recommendation, Shanna Inglesby. Shanna, the floor is yours.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, with all due respect, Mr. Tsai, I think you're a little confused because what this amendment does, what these changes to the bylaws do is increase the participation of those members of the party delegates, those members that are elected by the delegate, the AD chairs, the regional chairs. This increases it. And this is, I'm speaking from someone who lives in the Valley. We are adjacent to many Republican strongholds. And if we can recruit someone to run as a Democrat in those strongholds, why would we not want to put our support behind them? You don't need to be afraid of this. This is not shutting anybody else out. This is just making what we do easier and better and more effective. So there's no reason to be afraid of this. This is something that is needed. This is something that's necessary. And this is something that's not going to be used on a regular basis. We're not going to use this every time we turn around. So I encourage you to please support this and increase the participation.
That's time, Shanna. Thank you. Moving on to the second speaker in opposition to the committee's recommendation, Hannah Cho.
What? Hannah Cho.
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Happy API Heritage Month, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank Mr. Jackson and Ms. Woods-Gray for all your work in your committee because I just want to remind people that this is a volunteer thing, and so this is lots of hours and time that's put into this. And so it's in that kind of spirit. I just want to make sure that all those NBC commercials for the more you know, the better. I just kind of want insurance that we're not going to get stuck with kind of problematic candidates per se, that we've maybe had some endorsements because when you know better, you do better. So I just want to make sure that that is something that is kind of really thought out and there's consideration in that with these amendments. And, and I know we just went through this early endorsement process that we've all kind of talked about, but it is a necessary tool that we can all kind of
5 seconds.
Really use to help. And with that, I hope Democrats will all consider this carefully and thoughtfully. Thank you so much.
That's time. Thank you, Hannah. Now moving on to our, can I see that?
What the?
Second speaker in favor of the committee's recommendation, Mr. Lester Puente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lester Aponte, AB 46. I think this may sound very technical right now because of some of the arguments that are going back and forth, but really it is very simple. We're creating a process, a very important process that will let this body weigh in early on races where Democrats have struggled to win. It's an important process that would allow us to help those candidates. And in LA County, we should be able to win the vast majority of the races. We should not leave these races orphaned. There's safeguard after safeguard in place, including a 60% vote of this body. So you all get a say on whether we're endorsing this candidate. And there's very clear guidelines in the bylaws as to when this process will be applied, which will be very rarely.
5 seconds.
So I think it's simple. We need to vote for this.
That's time. Thank you, Lester. And now moving on to our third speaker in opposition to the committee's recommendation, Jane Wishon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a volunteer at the grassroots level for many years, and I think I've known many of you while I was doing that, I'm just concerned that this amendment might make it more difficult for our delegates to be involved in the process. I'm hoping that you can assure us that this will not dilute anyone's involvement in the early endorsement process, which I agree is a very important process for us to have. Thank you so much.
Sure. What?
Thank you, Jane. With that, we'll move on to our final speaker in support of the committee's recommendation, Recording Secretary Olivia Lee. Olivia, the floor is yours. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Olivia Lee, 8055, from a pretty traditionally red area. The bylaws amendment gives us more specifics, improves the structure, and expands the vetting protocols and consensus building procedures to strengthen the extraordinary early endorsement process. And this is also consistent with the endorsement process that we currently have. The entire LACDP body, including 80 delegations, have a voice in the proposed processes. It's collaborative, inclusive, deliberative, small d democratic, representative, and provides more flexibility that will allow LACDP to turn red areas blue. And it allows LACDP to give candidates a tactical, operational, political advantage. And the early head start they need to flip critical seats from red to blue as well. And in fact, one of the first key races considered by the early endorsement process was when Supervisor Janice Hahn turned District 4 blue back in 2016. With that, please vote yes to adopt this amendment, and thank you to both Lawrence and Jimmy for your hard work on this.
That's time. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. Lawrence,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for those kind words, Olivia. All time for debate having expired, we will proceed to a vote. If you wish to vote in favor of the amendments to Article 11, Section B6, and adding a new Section B7, please raise your hand.
No. We have motions on the floor.
I'm sorry. We're going to be doing a poll. I'm sorry. So we will be doing a poll. Hold on 1 second, and the poll will launch. If you want to approve the amendments, you'll vote yes. If you want to disapprove the amendments, you will vote no.
Yeah. What the hell is going on?
folks, because we are conducting this in a poll manner, we're going to remove non-voting members and guests to the waiting room so that we can conduct this vote appropriately with those members who are credentialed before 6:45. We're going to remove those members now. Members, their poll will launch on your screen. Just a reminder, it's a yes to the committee's recommendation, the option of no, and the option of abstention. Abstentions don't count toward the total. If you are using an app or smartphone or an iPad, click on the three dots or more to find the poll. The staff will launch the poll now.
This is terrible. This is terrible. No. The fuck? Spotlighted. Ponte is spotlighted. The fuck is going on? What the hell's going on? You can't proceed. You can't just proceed to a vote. You can extend the date. That's amazing. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is really bad. You have hands up. Yeah, good. Good.
We are ending this poll now.
Good. Good, Chris. That's good. Shit. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Point of order. Hey, asshole. The fuck? Jesus, effing H Christ. Yeah. It's terrible. It's terrible. This is terrible. He's terrible. And McKinley.
All right, folks. There were 142 votes cast. There were 5 abstentions. There were 87 yeses and 50 nos. 2/3 were needed to pass this motion. So therefore, the committee's recommendation fails. So we are not going to take this up at this time. Point of personal privilege. For those of you who are so confused about this, I encourage you to participate. Especially you, Christopher Robeson. All of you guys are so excited. I've never seen you at a meeting. I hope you decide to show up.
What?
But outside of that,
What?
you know, it's obviously something that we are working on together.
You can't say
and
that.
We've got a lot of work that we have to do as a party with Election Day
That's
coming up.
terrible.
And fundraising
That
and
is
the same 20
terrible.
of you who don't like to do anything but like to obstruct. I welcome you to
that's
participate
terrible.
in these meetings and actually provide some real
terrible.
feedback instead of showing up at this meeting to obstruct. So
That is
moving forward, we're
terrible.
going on to the Organization Development Committee report.
That is terrible.
Item C, Patrice Marshall McKenzie.
That is terrible.
And Jane Rochon,
That
excuse
is
me.
terrible. That is terrible. My God. That is terrible.
Hi, everybody.
That is
I know
terrible.
you're thrilled about the Organizational Development and Chartering Committee.
That is
I think Patrice is on. Hi, Patrice.
Hi.
So below, I will read the list of clubs and organizations that have met the requirement for a full 2022 charter. They are Alhambra Democratic Club, Grassroots Democrats HQ, Los Angeles County Young Democrats, North Valley Democratic Club, Pasadena United Democratic Headquarters, and San Pedro Democratic Club. In addition, one club has met the requirements for a provisional charter, which is Beach Cities Democrats. Patrice, do you want to take the vote?
Sure. At this time, I'd like to entertain a
can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Okay.
At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to receive and file this report. Is there a second?
Moved by Greenwood, second by Laura Lerman.
There is not debate on this item. If you are in favor of receiving this report, please raise your virtual hand. We'll give staff a moment to finish their count.
That's 80.
Are there any members opposed to receiving this report as submitted?
That's the
Thank you so much. Sounds like the ayes have it. This report will be filed as submitted as received. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Jesus.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you so much, Jane. Moving on to ledge action, Dina and Florencio.
Did it let me unmute? Can you hear me now? All right.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. So I am going to be taking up the first 3 bills on the report tonight, which is on the front page. And if we can have our ledge action report put in the chat, that would be great. We have 6 bills tonight, so I'm going to do 3 and Florencio will do 3. So the first bill on our report is AB 1695 by Assemblymember Miguel Santiago, Affordable Housing Loan and Grant Programs, Adaptive Reuse, and the committee's recommending support. Essentially, the bill would add adaptive reuse to the mix for affordable housing activities that are used in the ongoing loans and grant housing program administered by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And by adaptive reuse, they mean retrofitting and repurposing existing buildings to create new residential units. The bill passed out of the Assembly Housing Committee at the end of April, and it's currently in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. The next bill on our report is Assembly Bill 2146 by Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan. I think that's how you say it. Neonicotinoid pesticides, prohibited non-agricultural use, and the committee recommended support. This bill would basically put California on track with a growing number of states that have implemented similar limits on neonics, including recent action from the state of Maine and New Jersey and New York. The bill would ban neonics on lawns, gardens, and golf courses, with exceptions made for combating invasive pests and other specified cases. Neonics are systemic pesticides that are known to cause and harm bees, specifically helping with the colony collapse and other wildlife. At levels found in the environment, neonics affect their ability to sustain their populations. So that bill passed out of the Assembly Environmental Committee. It's now in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It's sponsored by the California Native Plant Society, Environment California, the National Resources Defense Council. It's supported by California Environmental Voters, which is formerly the CLCV, the California State Parks Foundation, Heal the Bay, the Sierra Club, and a giant long list of environmental groups. And it's opposed by the Cal Chamber, the Western Growers Association, and the American Chemistry Council. And the last bill on the front side of the report is Assembly Bill 2223 from Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, Reproductive Health Support. This bill is by Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, and I think she has a really good explanation for the purpose of the bill in the Assembly Health Committee analysis. So I'm just going to quote her. She says that a critical part of realizing reproductive justice for people in California is clarifying that nobody will be investigated, prosecuted, or incarcerated for their actual potential or alleged pregnancy outcomes. In California, the misuse of state power to prosecute people for their pregnancy outcomes is partly traceable to out-of-date provisions that give coroners a duty to investigate certain abortions and pregnancy losses. Based on these provisions, healthcare providers and institutions report people who have just given birth and had an abortion or experienced a pregnancy loss to police, triggering harmful investigations and even unlawful prosecutions. And this threat of criminal prosecution has a harmful effect on an individual and public health. So this bill is about protecting reproductive freedom by clarifying the Reproductive Privacy Act, and it prohibits pregnancy criminalization and creates the private right of action for people whose rights have been violated and to seek accountability using civil courts. So if there are any questions on any of these three bills, please feel free to raise your hands. Seeing no hands raised, I will call the vote. So all those in favor of the committee's recommendation to support AB 2223, 2146, and 1695, please raise your hand now. And Mr. Chair, when you're ready for the count, I'll be happy to take it.
$75, Dina.
Okay, so if we can clear the deck. Okay, and all those opposed, please raise your hand now. Okay, I see two. Well, nope, I see one.
Usual suspects.
Okay, just one?
Just one.
Okay, and all right, so we can clear the deck. And any abstentions? Okay.
You don't need an abstention, so you're good.
All right, so we're good. So those three pass. Before I hand it off to Florencio, I just wanted to let you guys, or actually, Florencio, when you're done, I'll have one thing I want to wrap up with. So Florencio, you handle the second page.
Thank you, Dina. Good evening, Democrats. So on page 2 of the Legislative Action Report, I will be covering those bills, starting with SB 1194 by Senator Ben Ellen. This bill would authorize the city, county, or city and county to require by ordinance or resolution that public restrooms constructed within its jurisdiction comply with specified requirements instead of complying with the plumbing standards set forth in the California Building Standards Code. This bill would accept as specified require public restroom facilities to be designed to serve all genders as specified. The bill would give a city, county, or city and county discretion to exclude certain occupancies from the bill's requirement. So essentially, this bill would require all public restroom facilities to be designed to serve all genders and meet all of the following requirements. Location along open circulation paths that maintain privacy and allow for high visibility. Water closets designed as single-use compartments for use by one occupant at a time or for family or assisted use. Water closets enclosed on all sides by walls or partitions from the floor to the ceiling. Urinals located in either in an area visually separate from the remainder of the facility or in individual compartments. Lavatories located in either the same compartment or grouped in an immediately adjacent common use area accessible to all users. Adequate light and ventilation within each compartment and each area of the facility, and signage identifying the toilet facilities and compartments for use by all genders. So essentially, this would allow cities to, if they are building or extensively remodeling restroom facilities, to create all gender restrooms with multiple fully enclosed stalls. And this bill is co-sponsored by the cities of Santa Monica, City of West Hollywood, and the Trans Latina Coalition, as well as ACIU, supported by ACIU, Southern California, and Equality California. And as of April 29th, there was no opposition on file. The committee's recommendation is to support this bill. Next up, we have Senate Bill 1230 by Senator Limon. This is zero emissions and near zero emissions vehicle incentive programs. I'm just going to read a little bit from the bill because the summary is kind of heavy on text and kind of technical. So this would modify the Clean Cars for All program to authorize each air district in the state to participate in the program and contract with the Air Resource Board to implement it. It would permit a resident of the state who is otherwise eligible to participate in CC4A to do so regardless of whether the air district they reside in has implemented it. Limits the use of CC4A incentives only to hybrid or zero emission vehicles, and align dispensation of funds with the Clear Car Incentive Program requirements as specified. It would establish requirements for all the Clean Car Incentive Programs that are administered by the Air Resource Board, including Clean Cars for All, the Clean Vehicle, the CVRP, and the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program, as well as the Clean Fuel Reward Program as follows. It defines a mobility option to mean a voucher for public transit, car sharing, bike sharing, or electric bicycles, and zero emission and near zero emission vehicle incentive program to mean a program that provides incentives to an individual for the purchase of a light duty zero emission or near zero emissions vehicle, and requires the Air Resource Board to on or before July 1st, 2023, create a single unified education and application portal for all included incentive programs. Additionally, it would require the Air Resource Board to on or before July 1st, 2023, adopt revisions to the requirements of the included incentive programs if feasible to ensure: 1, an incentive is provided to the applicant before they purchase the vehicle or other mobility option; 2, a submitted application is approved or denied within 24 hours of submission; 3, a person's participation in one program does not affect eligibility for another; and 4, a person who is eligible can participate once between July 1st, 2023 and July 1st, 2026, regardless if they participated prior. The committee's recommendation is to support this bill, and the gist of the bill is that it basically streamlines the process for folks to apply for clean vehicle incentive programs as opposed to the hodgepodge of programs that exist now. And finally, we have Senate Bill 1360 by Senators Tom Umberg and Ben Ellen, the disclosures of contributors, and this is a recommendation of support as well. So the proposed law, among other things, would do the following: require an initiative, referendum, or recall petition to instruct voters to sign the petition only after viewing certain disclosures regarding the top contributors to the initiative, referendum, or recall as specified. Make specified changes to requirements regarding the form, content, and presentation of the initiative, referendum, and recall petitions, and make additional changes to the disclosure requirements for certain political advertisements to identify the top contributors to the campaign committee paying for the advertisement, including changes to the required form, content, and presentation of the disclosures depending on the medium in which the advertisement appears. So the two things that it accomplishes is when you're walking around and somebody comes up to you and asks you to sign a petition to place an item on the ballot, it would have specific requirements to provide